Hey guys, I'm Marcus Buff Bagwell, and one thing I'm grateful to be able to say is that I was not only at the very first WCW Monday Night Nitro, but I was actually in the very first match before we went live on TV that night, September 4th, 1995, Mall of America, Minneapolis, Minnesota. It was such an exciting time for WCW. Man, it was exciting. But before we dive in, be sure to click the subscribe button right here on this video to stay in the loop for future videos. And if you want to check out wrestling, sports merch, or my own merch, or even book a cameo, then click the links in the description of this video. Now let's get started. September 4th, 1995. Marcus Bagwell had been at WCW almost exactly 3 years. I had been a Rookie of the Year. I had been a World Tag Team Champion a couple of times, maybe two or three, three at this time. No, two at this time with three different partners, two at this time. And so it's 1995. Me and Scotty Riggs are the American males at this time. And before every big event, before every pay-per-view event, before every Nitro, there was always a dark match. You had a match to kind of get the crowd warmed up before the first match went on. It was a very, very important spot for two reasons. Number one, you knew that you were next to be on the show. You were good enough for the show, but not quite. You had to wait your time, so you were dark. That means you were not televised. It was for the crowd only and not televised. That was what was called dark. So me and Scotty Riggs, as the American males, wrestled Bunkhouse Buck and Dirty Dick Slater at the Mall of America. And it was an exciting night, man. I mean, first of all, we're wrestling in a mall, which is pretty cool. And you got to remember, we wasn't really drawing any crowds. We didn't have that many people watching us yet. We were trying to get popular, but we were having a hard time drawing a crowd for a big venue, and it just wasn't happening for us. But this had some substance. We were definitely excited about this. This was a chance for WCW. We had no idea what was coming, but we were excited for sure. And the show goes on. It starts with Brian Pillman, and I think Jushin Thunder Liger was the very first match of the whole show, or maybe the main event, but they were like the headlining of the show. You know, that was like a big part of the show. Incredible show that night. Lex Luger was somehow, my best friend Sting somehow hid keeping Lex Luger from me. I just couldn't believe it. I don't know how he did it, because I mean, how do you hide, 6'4", 300 pounds coming in? Sting did a great job keeping that quiet from me. I did not have any idea. Very first Nitro, brother, 1996. You have put your notice in with the WWF, and you through Sting, and you're coming into WCW. What walk us through that? You got a kayfabe, but they gotta hide you. So
that was a stipulation. Eric and Sting knew. Then they let Hogan know. No one knew. Had to finish my house shows out at WWE. I was not thrilled with that, not giving notice. Vince and I had a good relationship, but that was part of Eric's stipulation. And flew from Canada to a house show, WWE, or
WWF at the time,
but yeah.
Right? But WWE.
And they flew me to a hotel on the other side of town, so no one would know. Bumped into the building after the show started with a towel over my head on the other side of the mall. Walked me up to the position to walk out there right before the last match to get nose to nose with Hogan.
And so
had no idea. Obviously, none of us knew Nitro would get that big. And
sure.
It'd be a Monday Night
Very
Wars.
first Nitro ever. Mall
I didn't know
America.
that show would ever be a big deal or not. I didn't know what a incredible, iconic moment that was to be in that first Nitro and walk out and be like one of the big surprises that night.
Me and Scotty Riggs were dark on that show, and I remember seeing you thinking, this is big. This is really big.
Yeah, at the time I didn't think anything of it.
No.
Yeah.
I'm sure you come from the WWF, you come from the biggest
The
of all.
show could have been canceled
Sure.
3 months later.
We
Didn't get any
were
ratings, yeah.
WCW was not
Yeah.
WWF by no means.
Yeah.
And little did we know it was going to be groundbreaking.
Amazing.
Groundbreaking ride. But there was just a lot of excitement going into this thing. I remember that, again, I don't think we had any idea what was going to come out of it, but it just had that feeling about it. It just felt special. It felt like we were doing something that was going to count, and again, nobody knew what was coming, but man, it definitely had the feeling of like this was the Clash of Champions was a huge show for WCW. The pay-per-views were big, but we just never really had a big crowd. So I think one of the things that really made it special was it was in the Mall of America. And to have it in the mall, you always want a good crowd there. You want people there, so because that's what makes it exciting for the wrestlers. You want a big crowd there, and at a mall, even though there may not be wrestling fans, there's still a big crowd. So we had the big crowd there. It was cool. It was in the mall. It just had a great feeling of, man, this thing's really going to be something. And I remember just how unbelievable Brian Pillman and Jushin Thunder Liger's match was. It was a fantastic match. It was special. It was like they knew. Even going through my match, it was like everybody knew that this was an important show. And maybe I remember even Eric, having a meeting before the show, and again, it just wasn't explained like it should have been because nobody knows. But you just had that feeling like this was special. And then when Lex came out, I remember it so vividly. It was as soon as I saw Lex Luger's face on our television, I knew that meant something big, man. I knew that was the biggest thing I'd ever seen at WCW. I knew even when Hogan came, everybody knew he was coming. So it wasn't that impactful. It was really cool. It brought a lot of power to us at WCW, but it didn't help us like we thought. I remember Hogan came over for that overseas trip, and it was a successful trip, but it wasn't what they thought it was going to be. So it really, again, it was huge that Hulk came to WCW and the red and yellows coming to WCW, but really it was not as impactful as to me as seeing the total package Lex Luger on WCW, man. It was just because Lex had left right when I came in. So he was gone for about 3 years. And like I said, to see him and to not know he was coming in, I knew it meant something big. And Buddy, did it ever. I mean, we were up and running really quick right there. I mean, you got the total package Lex Luger that's part of WCW. And again, once I finally heard what was all entailed with that, with him having to leave unexpectedly from the WWF and then turning his back on them to come to us, it was just a really, really big night. I'll never forget, as long as I live, ever, I'll never forget September the 4th, 1995 in Minneapolis, Minnesota, the Mall of America, the first Monday Night Nitro event ever. And forever, Marcus Buff Bagwell will be part of that history. I wasn't on the television show that night, but I was. The first match the crowd saw. Great time, and I will never forget it, and that's one thing that can't be taken from me. I was on the very first Monday Night Nitro.